Yes, welcome back. You're watching Daybreak, and that's a hashtag to use. My name is Freddie Ndimule. It's time to take a look at the issues behind the headlines. This morning, Land's boss adds insult to injury. He has blown 5 billion shillings of taxes on suspect Ruaraka land deals, with another 5 billion in the pipeline. But Swazuri thinks it is fleecing and swindling as usual to borrow Parliament's term. Now, this is the front page of the Daily Nation, not me saying. On the Standard, secret hand in MP's sugar probe standoff. That's a big one on the front page of the Standard. This morning, we're privileged to have for our news review Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. on my right. Good morning, karibu sana.
Good morning.
Senator Moses Kajwang on my left, immediate left, Senator for Homa Bay.
Good morning.
Good morning. And last but definitely not least, the Senator for Kiambu, Kimani Wamatangi. Good morning.
Morning.
It is a new studio, bigger, brighter.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yes. How do you find it?
It feels good to be here.
Yes. Even the seat feels nice.
I've
seen you swinging.
It smells fresh paint. They say that the Queen of England believes everything smells fresh paint. I think this is how the Queen feels like.
It's very nice, actually, I must say.
Yes, it is definitely
it's commendable,
fresh. Yeah. But the issues we're looking at are not as fresh. You've been handling them. The Ruaraka land scandal, Solidum tragedy, sugar politics, and the renewed war between the Senate and the National Assembly. We'll be looking at that. I've seen quite a big story there. Let's start off with what's happening with the Ruaraka land scandal. At least two of you sit on that committee that's probing that issue. Yep. Yesterday, the NLC, the National Lands Commission Chair, Muhammad Swazuri, came out and said repeated that famous state officer's clarion call, I shall not resign, and I cannot resign, and went ahead even to claim that this whole thing is being orchestrated to target CS Fred Matiang'i. Okay. I don't even know which question to ask there. Where do you understand where he's coming from?
Fred, I chair the committee that is investigating this particular matter. And let me put a disclaimer that the standing orders prevent me from discussing substantive issues that are before the committee. And I will therefore deal with matters that are in the public domain.
Yes.
I say that because one of the teams that we've been investigating, Mburu and the companies that he represents, have even taken us to court. They first took Nation Media Group to court to gag them from reporting parliamentary proceedings on this particular matter. And strangely enough, the judiciary granted the orders, and for a while you saw that this matter was silent because Nation Media Group had been gagged. They took my committee to court, Wamatangi and I, and the entire committee and the entire Senate, to prevent us from summoning directors of the companies that were involved in this transaction. That matter is still in court. The court order that was granted to him so that we could not summon them is still in force. Yes. So there have been a lot of shenanigans trying to prevent us from getting to the depth of this matter. Yes. Now, let me deal with the matters that are in the public domain. I saw NLC Chair Mohamed Swazuri in a very angry tirade last evening, saying he's not resigning, and as far as he's concerned, is helping Uhuru Kenyatta achieve his Big Four agenda. And I don't know whether part of that Big Four agenda is falsification of claims, not just in Ruaraka, but SGR and everywhere else, because we've had stories of serious issues within
Is that part of what you're handling?
That is not what we're handling. Okay. Because what we're handling is circumstances under which a school that was built by the government and supported by the government from 1984 to date, all of a sudden becomes private property for it to be transferred. Okay. In fact, there is an attempt to kind of confuse matters. There is a big piece of land that is owned by Mburu. The issue is whether 10% of it or part of it was surrendered for construction of public utilities. And I can say this without fear that I'm breaching the standing orders. That yes, the records we have before us indicate that Mburu owns a certain piece of land in Ruaraka. But the records that we also have that have come from the Lands Ministry, that have come from the CS Education, that have come from the Governor of Nairobi, was that 13 point something acres of that land was surrendered for establishment of public utilities, and that is how a primary school was established there, a secondary school was established there. There is a chief's camp on that piece of land.
And
there
that's
is
the land
a
in
church
contention.
on that piece of land.
Yes.
For us, we are focused on the part that was meant to serve the public, and that has served the public from 1984 to date until a few months to the elections, when Swazuri and others decided that somebody had to be paid for that land, land that government had invested in for more than 30 years. For us, that's the scope of our investigations. And finally, Fred, I would expect the DCI, EACC, DPP to have started processing this matter. They do not have to wait for Parliament to conclude its investigations. When in the court of public opinion, this matter has been investigated, it has been prosecuted, and judgment has already been rendered that the persons involved are guilty as charged. So they should not wait for my committee.
One of the biggest concerns is the fact that all this is playing out in the public, even the proceedings before your committee being broadcast live. Now we're seeing even those mentioned, or those who are being investigated, including Swazuri, going out and calling a press conference to actually talk about these issues. Is this how it should be handled? Because it appears they've discovered that what you're doing is just playing to the public, so they are playing a similar game.
I mean, let me say just two things very quickly, Fred, and good morning to our viewers. You know, first I would really want to say with a lot of respect, but also, you know, urging caution. And also that people, members of the public, and our law enforcement should also be able to separate what is, you know, shenanigans, or what is intended to divert attention to what is there. Because one, let me say to Swazuri, I do not think that dropping big names, you know, like the name of the president, we are trying to help the president, and trying to rope in Matiangi, that they're looking for Matiangi. Matiangi is a cabinet secretary of who is capable of defending himself. He does not need Swazuri to start bringing in his name. You know, what Swazuri should do is defend his own actions in the entire of the process without bringing in other names. Because when you drop in those names, he's going to imagine, in my view, that he would hide. And two things. One, you see, Fred, and my colleague and chairman of the committee has said it, that that dispute has never been about whether there is land that belongs to Mburu. But remember, one of the key things that we said, which is on record and which is evidence, that the surrender of that land was given to the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Education, not even to the school, and it is in writing. And then it is followed by minutes that confirm that this surrender has been given to you as the minister to hold on behalf of the school. And that means that it is legalized by a process of the committee at the city council then sitting and giving it away. If then there was going to be a reversal of that lawful and legal process of surrendering land, then you would expect that when somebody comes to say to the ministry, pay us for this land, the minister will be asking, we already have this document which gave us this land since 1999. Now you want you to pay for it. So where is the evidence that this has been revoked? You know, that surrender is given by the Commissioner of Lands, who is the government's legal person who is empowered to enforce that part of the law. So you'd be expecting that the first question that would have come from the ministry is, you're asking for compensation for land which we have been given by you know, the authority in place. So show us any other documentation, and say to the county government that also, if you have revoked this surrender, also give us documents. What you don't do is run to pay, but every other circumstance, including, you saw us during the investigation, the speed at which those payments were being made. Fred, the evidence before the committee is that there were no funds to pay for that land. These funds had to be sought within other votes within the ministry, put together quickly under a supplementary budget to pay within 3 months. So what you're saying is, this committee is not intent at all on victimizing anybody, including Swazuri or anyone. The point that we're trying to make is very simple. If these guys in the process, whether they are at the county government or the city council, at the Ministry of Lands, the NLC itself, if anyone is guilty, then the law enforcement must find out. Lastly, let me say this, that whether action is taken now or it is not taken, the committee will have to do its work, come up with its findings, and history will judge eventually whether the truth was ever, eventually.
And to be fair to this platform, we're not able to probe whether or not we have the facts as the committee would be able to do, or any other investigative arm of government. But what is playing out in the public does create some sort of perspective, because what we are seeing the NLC chairperson do by calling a press conference seems to be challenging what the committee is doing. And there's been this feeling that committees of parliament, whether the Senate, and you chair one of them, or the National Assembly, simply play out to the they're just simply trying to change public perception about an issue, probably even sanitizing some of those people. When we see someone who has the opportunity to appear before this committee and defend himself, but now choosing to call a press conference to actually challenge what the committee is doing, or what is happening in Parliament, that says something about these committees and the kind of work you do.
Yes, yes. In fact, that's part of the reason why there's this outcry by our colleagues, is because these two gentlemen in their committee are doing their job, and they are doing their job well. And therefore, what we are seeing Swazuri doing is called panic. He's panicking and preempting the decisions that are going to be made by the committee, because the committee is still interrogating the matter. And he has an opportunity to come and say he will not resign before the committee on record. We can actually put him on oath. We are allowed to put him on oath, so that if he lies to the committee, we can find him guilty of perjury. Let me say this. It's absolutely strange. I've not sat in the committee, but it's absolutely strange from a legal perspective to claim that a piece of land where there are public utilities is private land. Extremely strange that the government, through the ministry, would actually have a school which was constructed using public funds on somebody's private land, and that person has not complained or said anything. In fact, under the law of prescription, the county, which ideally is the owner of public land where there is a school on public space, has a right to claim rights of prescription. If you have been on a land for 12 years without any quarrel, without any dispute, the Nairobi County ought to say that is public land. So to some extent, the county governor of Nairobi is right. So the third thing that I find very strange is that if the government intended to acquire public-private land, the process under the compulsory acquisition would have resolved the questions of ownership of land. Means that you would have gazetted, for purposes of acquisition, this piece of land. Any person who has a claim would have come forward with a claim for compensation and details of ownership. So that by the time the government pays for it, it is satisfied that that land and the issues surrounding it have been resolved. Therefore, the issues that my colleagues are raising, that the speed which appears to have been taken in terms of paying for this land without following the process, smells of corruption. When you see Swazuri defending himself so loudly that he will not resign, what does he think he is? That seat doesn't belong to him. It's not a family thing. He will go home when the right time comes, and if we say he is going to go home, he will go home.
But is that the kind of consequence that you should ideally expect? Because these parliamentary committees have been accused of being toothless, simply coming up with reports, and you're tabling one report as well.
Yes, I'm tabling today.
But what kind of consequence should we expect when someone goes to the media and says, I will not resign?
Well, Fred, maybe before I talk about the consequence, let me bring to the attention of the nation that before the payment for the land was done, the CS Education set up a task force that visited the schools, that talked to the boards of management, the principals and the stakeholders. And a task force set up by the ministry, its conclusion was that these schools are built on land that was surrendered for establishment of public utilities. And therefore, we should not pay. In fact, we should fast track the regularization of titles for this school. And when CS Amina came before us, and we asked, why did you set up a task force that came up with recommendations that you chose not to abide with? And she told us, you go talk to my predecessor. That I cannot answer. So I think that's a matter that in the public domain that talking about does not prejudice what my committee is doing. Now let's go back to the issue of what can parliamentary committees do. Parliamentary committees are quasi-judicial. In fact, parliamentary committees are political courts. We cannot prosecute matters in parliament, and we cannot render judgment in parliament. The judgment we render in parliament is a political judgment on the basis of the issues, on the basis of the law, on the basis of the circumstances that have been brought before us. We will write a report that would say maybe Swazuri is guilty or is not guilty. That then becomes a political verdict. For you to reach a verdict that can lead to conviction, it has to go to court. So, Fred, I hear your frustration. And I've said this, that we used to be very optimistic, but we are now very skeptical. And that skepticism has a reason because people like Swazuri, they come up and they spit in our faces, talk very loudly on TV.
Because they know
in our houses, in your living
whatever
room,
you're doing is probably of no consequence.
You see an angry Swazuri telling you that he's going nowhere. And it gives you the feeling that nobody cares in this country.
But will he go anywhere?
We shall do our job as parliament. How I wish that Wamatangi and I could be given an opportunity to prosecute this matter in court. Unfortunately, we don't have that now.
That's the helplessness
so we will
feel
write,
as members of the
we
public.
will write our report the same way Mutula is going to write the Solai report. We will rely on other bodies to ensure that a conviction is done. But at the very minimum,
by itself, the kind of a report we expect from your committee is not enough to actually...
It's a recommendation.
Fred, at the very minimum, because we're saying we're making a political judgment, at the very minimum, if the public officers and state officers involved are people with a conscience, are people who understand what the Constitution requires of them, they would vacate office even before this matter goes
Can I say something? When the Director of Public Prosecutions, we interrogated him at length about this scandal. And he pointed out very interesting facts. And that's why he said that he required the ESCC to clarify. He pointed two issues. One, why was 250 million transferred to Mauritius quickly? Why 22 accounts opened quickly for purposes of the disbursement of funds? And lastly, on what basis did the chairperson of the National Finance Committee refused to pass the motion for the supplementary budget, so that then somebody circumvented that process of a supplementary budget, which requires a 10% on Article 223, and then found a vote head to pay this money, while Parliament, what Parliament had refused, that this payment should not be done. Those three issues are going to send somebody to jail. I'm telling them to prepare for the Friday they are going to sleep in jail, because they will sleep in jail.
Based on the report from this committee of...
based on the facts. I'm just talking about the facts. They have not issued a report yet.
And legally, Fred, just to add to what he's a lawyer in this panel, so he can speak to two things. One, you'd be asking yourself, Swazuri, as he speaks and says the things he's saying, he's already in court. Remember, he went to court, I think, 2 weeks ago. And you'd be asking yourself this, Senator Mutula, that if you're paying somebody for a piece of land like he did, do you go and pay somebody, that person, give him money on the basis of your belief that that land belongs to him, and then later go to court to tell the court, determine whether this land belongs to him? because I mean, that's why he went to court.
That is the inquiry I'm talking about.
To tell the court that the court should determine who the land belongs to. But he's already paid.
1.5 billion later.
Secondly, Fred, and that's on what my colleague here has said. Government consists of three arms. That's the executive, ourselves, and the judiciary. And it is not envisaged, although they're identical, they are independent, but it is not envisaged that they should work at cross purposes, the three arms of government. And so when there is a recommendation
from Parliament, it should be binding on the other arms of government,
but
for them to follow it in good faith, so that it will also propel the general direction of government to achieve
the history
the rights and the well-being of the people.
Conducted, and we've been beaming them live, including the ones on NYS scandals, and reports are made, but we never get to see any consequence coming directly from the reports that you table. Yes. Finally, you're tabling a report today.
Yes.
On the Solai Dam tragedy.
Yes.
And we've seen the kind of conviction that you've been conducting that probe.
Yes.
But what kind of consequence? And that's the same question we are asking, because the vigor, the kind of high-raised voices with which sometimes you interrogate these people who appear before you. But does it just end at that? Do you expect your report to actually inform any other process?
Let me tell you, from the Solai probe and what my two colleagues are doing, I just want to, because we're in a new studio, to just be less cynical. Please, be a little less cynical. It's so early in the morning that you're going to depress Kenyans for nothing.
But Kenyans are looking at you and watching you every day.
We didn't believe.
Okay, what happens after
Let me tell
this?
you, until recently, we didn't believe that a governor could be taken to court. Senator Wamatangi sat in the Public Accounts Committee for a whole 5 years.
Yes.
Never got a governor to sit. One sued us for 5 years continuously.
Exactly.
He appeared.
Please, exactly my point.
Have some element of, be optimistic.
The processes that the Senate has taken up,
DCI
all the probes
arrested.
that you conducted, even against governors,
Listen,
has any of them actually...
now that's what I'm talking about. Now that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Please allow me to finish. Nobody thought that a cabinet secretary could be taken to court. People from KPLC would be hauled into court, and many other actions. The country is slowly changing, and therefore it has given us, particularly the Senate, impetus. We have energy to unravel these mysteries. And we know now, from what, for example, from the commitment that we got as a Solai Committee probe on the Director of Public Prosecutions, that he wants to see our report. And we are going to do, and we have done, a thorough job. And we expect that once we make our recommendations, that the respective organs of government are going to do their job. That, I can tell you, is going to happen. But we are going to say the truth of the matters so that the public can understand.
So this time you hope at least your report will inform even the DPP's actions.
It's the DPP who said that we want to see your report, so that if there are any further actions that we need to take, we want to see what you have
Because it appears even the things you're probing, already the DPP is on them.
Let me temper your cynicism.
Yeah, a little bit.
Even on the Kenya Airways probe.
Yes.
This Kenya Airways probe that people keep talking about, that what was Senate doing Kenya Airways probe.
Yes.
Mutula will tell you that most of the recommendations of that committee that was chaired by Professor Nyang' Nyong'o have one way or the other been implemented. And the findings have one way or the other come true.
Including the
removal. Is it as a direct consequence of that process by the Senate?
Yes. You cannot remove the role of Senate and Parliament.
And particularly because in the case, because I sat in the Kenya Airways probe, the issues came to light. Means that we unraveled the problems, put them on the table. And everybody, for the public and government to begin to accept that while it is continuing to fund Kenya Airways, they must deal with the issues of management. That is why the board was changed. The chairman was removed, CEO was removed, the financial officers, 2 of them were removed. 4 people, senior officers removed in Kenya.
As a direct consequence of
the probe by Senate.
Now you've also run into trouble with the National Assembly because of what you're doing. Yes, because they claim that your role as senators should stop at oversighting what's happening at the county level. They say you failed miserably in that. Corruption at the county level, it's at an all-time high, yet that is what you should be oversighting. Now you've decided to take up other roles and probe things that you should not even be working on.
Well, Fred, the wording of the Constitution is that Senate involves itself in matters affecting counties. And if a matter does not affect counties, then it is a matter that counties have no obligation to abide by. And look at the Finance Bill or Finance Act. Does it affect counties?
You just mentioned Kenya Airways. How does that directly affect any county?
Is yes. The only thing that I could say does not affect counties, and maybe as a senator I would not insist that we deal with it, are treaties and international obligations. Everything else affects counties. But I want us to move away from that, because Supreme Court Advisory number 2 of 2013 dealt with this matter exhaustively. Yes. And maybe we are seeing people who are new in Parliament who perhaps have not understood what the Constitution says and what the Supreme Court has ruled in the past. I think the problem is sibling rivalry. Look at the headlines. The sugar probe is in problems. The Ruaraka probe is going on. The Solai probe chaired by Mutula is going on. And so people are seeing a Senate that is focused. People are seeing a Senate that is getting results. And they are asking themselves, wait a minute, why is it that Senate is making progress while our own committees are not making progress? In Ruaraka, remember, there was a committee that tabled a report. You should ask them what happened to that report, because it was tabled almost 3 weeks ago.
Yes.
And today, my committee is asking questions that had not been asked before. Today, my committee has managed to keep the issue of Ruaraka alive. If it had been left to the National Assembly, it would have died 3 weeks ago.
Don't you think there should be better coordination instead of duplicating roles?
By
because
cameralism.
some of these issues are already being probed by the National Assembly, and probably that's where the problem comes in.
No, I think two things, quick things to say, Fred, about that. One, on that specific claim, because actually that was one of the issues that was raised in the National Assembly when they were complaining that Senate is duplicating the work of committees especially. And see, ask yourself a very simple question, Fred. The Constitution itself provides for how does a bill or a proposal for law become law. It says you take it to the National Assembly, then take it to Senate, the same one, with the same wording and everything. And once the two houses have debated the same law and held different opinions and eventually agreed on it, that's how it becomes law. Now, so if, for example, you have like this Ruaraka land issue, what is different from it? That you have the opinion of the National Assembly, you have the opinion of the Senate, and as my colleague here says, that is the nature and trend of bicameralism. That's the kind of constitution that we gave ourselves, that has got two houses, one that plays the role at the National Assembly, the other one that tempers the kind of laws or decisions that are made at the level of the Senate. Two, you see, and I don't want us to become too legal in this basis because the lawyer is here. But, you know, on that specific question on the restriction, and we sat with Senator Mutula in a certain meeting a few days to discuss this.
Yes.
It is very clear that the Constitution only envisages a limitation on the Senate as far as legislation or lawmaking is concerned. But if you look at every other function, including the function of committees, including the powers given to committees, the word used in the Constitution is Parliament. The term Parliament is also defined and explained in the Constitution, that Parliament means both houses. So when the law says that Parliament shall look at this, it means that the National Assembly will look at it and the Senate will look at it. For every function, for every power that has been given to Parliament under the Constitution, it's given to both houses. But it is that, probably I would call it myopic, for lack of a better word, approach that limits that thinking and vision to only think that because there is one Article 96 in the Constitution which defines the role of the Senate as oversight over counties, that then everything else in the Constitution means that the power of the Senate is only limited to that Article 96.
But then the questions come, if at all your main role as defined is probably oversight over counties, are you confident that you've done that job well enough to actually take up other matters that could be handled by the National Assembly?
Let me begin from where you started before, and I finish with that. Allow me. Number one, the arguments, and Senator Kajwang pointed to this, about our role as a Senate were clearly defined in the Supreme Court Advisory number 2 of 2013. In fact, what they said, that a good speaker would find that any matter in this country concerns the Senate. Because there has been a narrow definition from very myopic people who think that where do these counties exist? Fred Ndimuli, do these counties exist on air? These counties exist in the country. And we pointed out in the case of Kenya Airways that National Assembly was approving what is called the refinancing of KQ through public finance. At that time, it was 4 billion shillings. How does the 4 billion shillings affect counties? It's called borrowing. The borrowing affects the bottom line for the money that we give to counties. The more money that government borrows, it affects the bottom line because we pay our debts first before we divide revenue. That is how it affects county governments, the bottom line. The reason why county governments are not getting money is because government has borrowed too much to the extent that it cannot remit money to counties. Now, in terms of our roles, most people don't understand, and I want to say it very clearly today. Under Article 96 is what we call the special jurisdiction of the Senate. Special jurisdiction. We are given a very special jurisdiction.
But the National Assembly cannot encroach.
They don't have.
Yes.
But under Article 94, as Parliament, we have an overall oversight obligation as Parliament. Under Article 94, there's a mistake. Even the press, by the way, even yesterday when I was listening to the press, and somebody alluded to it, they say Parliament is back from recess, which is National Assembly. And at that time, the Senate is in session.
Yeah.
We are treated as if we are a small sister of the National Assembly, yet we are Parliament. The fact is that the things that we are doing concern counties. For the probe that we are doing today concerns counties. The probe that they are doing concerns counties because if it is found that in fact the national government should not have paid for Ruaraka land, that piece of land is an asset of Nairobi County.
Yes.
We should list it as an asset of Nairobi County as a public space that should be managed by Nairobi County. That is how it concerns counties. The Solai Dam issue is a dam, a water resource that concerns county governments because water provision is county governments. So to answer your question as to whether we can do this in a better way, Senator Sakaja and I have proposed something we call the Concurrence Bill 2018. The Concurrence Bill 2018 will try and get a better way of doing things. In the Supreme Court Advisory number 2 of 2013, the Supreme Court, in their wisdom and they are forever wise, advised the speakers to form a mediation committee for matters concerning how we should work under Article 110.
So at least you agree how you've been working so far has not been ideal. The workings of the National Assembly vis-a-vis the Senate.
The Constitution envisions as the two speakers who are from the majority side should sit and sit to agree that this bill proposed by Senator Wamatangi concerns counties, it will come to the Senate. The bill by Senator Kajwang concerns counties, it will come to the county governments. How a cybercrime bill, which I had drafted in the last Senate, goes to the National Assembly and doesn't concern counties, is weird. It's strange.
And Fred, Article 110 is, what Mutula is proposing is just to provide greater clarity to Article 110. That is in the current constitution, that before any bill is brought before a house, the two speakers must sit down to consider whether it is a bill concerning counties or whether it is a money bill. And we've even said that there needs to be a certificate of concurrence.
Yes.
But in my experience in Parliament, whenever these kind of issues come up, that Senate and National Assembly is fighting, just know that someone is stealing somewhere.
Yes.
Just know that something is going wrong somewhere, and this is being used as a distraction from the corruption, a distraction
and what
from
else could be going on, Senator?
Well, there's corruption all over.
And what
Mau
else
Forest
could be going wrong?
Mau Forest is
We'll
burning.
talk about Mau evictions just now, but the issue, because in yesterday's daily, I saw complaints from the National Assembly that even bills that originate from that end, once they come to the Senate, they're not given priority. And bills that come from the Senate, senators complain that once they get to the National Assembly, they're shelved. Is that a genuine concern?
32 of them, including Wamatangi's.
Yes, I believe that's a genuine concern, and it's a reality.
Yes.
You know, Fred, you remember in the last session that I proposed the assumption of office by governors.
Yes.
And this was one of the most important bills, I believe, at that time that would have been helping this country to transition and conduct the general election of 2017.
Yes.
And everybody knew that. And there was a lot of expectation. You know what they did? When the bill went to the National Assembly, it was put in a shelf somewhere.
And it died like that.
Yes. I mean, I've had now to redo it in this second session, and now it's back to the National Assembly. So what we did then was actually to have sections of that bill borrowed by the then Cabinet Secretary for devolution to conduct the general election. And so that gives you an idea into the seriousness of that impasse. That claim, and I can say that
with a lot of not only conviction, but standing on fairly high moral ground as a senator, that most of the bills that have come to the Senate from the National Assembly actually have been dealt with and prioritized. That I think
majority of them.
I think that's probably where,
there's none that has died
in my view,
no, none.
In my view, I think probably that's why we made the mistake. We made it too casual, too obvious that the duality of how matters are done does not matter, because most of the bills that went to the National Assembly from the Senate actually never saw the light of day.
Never.
And the worst bit of it is that you send a bill, and yesterday in the discussions in the Senate, this came up, that there were bills, for example, a bill that was proposed by Bonnie Halwale,
yes,
another one by Senator Agnes Zani,
yes,
which I was a member of that committee.
Yeah,
and you have
committee.
A bill that a senator has thought through, went through the process of research, put down into law, then when it goes there, somebody pulls it from the shelf, goes and makes a pseudo bill from it, or a fake one, a clone of that bill, and then brings it to the table now in the National Assembly and has it passed as a law.
Okay.
Will
your remedy work on that? What you're working on with Senator Sakaja?
Yeah, let me say this, and I'm saying this with tremendous respect to my friend Kimani Wamatangi. The Speaker of the National Assembly is as a result of the majority of party, which is Jubilee. Same with Speaker Lusaka. Now, in Australia, the Speaker of the Senate, when I was there, was a member of the opposition. Now, for purposes, the people who drafted this constitution must have been good gentlemen and ladies, because they thought, they didn't understand, they didn't think that two speakers would have a problem sitting. They sit across in the same corridor.
After all, they are from the same party.
They are from the same party. I only learned that the National Assembly had a probe on Solai when I was in Solai. I was not aware. And I'm not supposed to know as a member, because that is a leadership question. We are just doing a legislation to have clarity. But the way we work, the way we think that they should work as speakers, is not for the Speaker of the National Assembly to castigate us on the floor. It's bad manners. We expect that they would sit and talk. When my colleagues in the National Assembly and Senate from Jubilee wanted the Election Laws Amendment Bill passed, just before the second round of the presidential elections, they are joint committees. So what is the problem about having a joint probe on sugar? What is the problem about having
because
a joint...
CSS have been complaining of too many summonses. One summon by the Senate, another one by the National Assembly, and it makes their work problematic because they're always in Parliament.
Please don't give these people too much attention. What is it that they are doing in their offices that is not important for them to come to Parliament? We can draw a calendar of schedules for them. What they are doing in their offices is not more important than what we are doing in Parliament, because we don't ask them, we don't call them to ask them about our personal issues. We call to ask them about public matters. So even if they spend the whole day in Parliament, that is what they are employed and paid to do. Yes.
And Fred, don't run away from the issue of bicameralism. That's a constitution we have. And yesterday on the floor, I likened it to polygamy. That when you make the decision to be polygamous, then all of a sudden you have more than one wife to consult. That's bicameralism. And we've seen there's nothing unique about the Kenyan situation. The United States, that has had a longer experience with bicameralism, still has problems. Even in the United Kingdom, you still hear calls that scrap the House of Lords. And even in the US, there are people who think that the Senate should be scrapped. When there was an inquiry into Facebook and Cambridge Analytica over data privacy issues, we saw Mark Zuckerberg going to the House of Representatives today, and the next day he was in the Senate. And he was being asked the same questions. The only thing you could have noted was that the questions coming out of the Senate were fairly more detailed, deeper and more mature. so unless, if anyone has a problem, and I have an issue with some of the members who I thought ought to have known better, who said that they're coming up with a bill to dissolve Senate. I mean, they can't. They can't. In polygamy, you can divorce. In bicameralism, you cannot.
There's no option for divorce.
So I think we must learn to live together. There is so much that we can do separately, that where the overlaps exist, should not be a cause for alarm and should not be the agenda. And personally, I didn't even want us as senators to respond to the idleness that came out of the National Assembly.
No.
I wouldn't have even encouraged that discussion.
And even if
I need to give you time to make your final comments because our time is up.
Just in a short, because of all my colleagues have said, I think indeed that is a major negative in the eyes of the public about Parliament. Because
about the National Assembly or
no, I mean, you see the entire discussion and push and pull and conflict. You know, to the person there who has elected members of Parliament, that is both in the Senate and the National Assembly, expecting to get quality debate and services and laws passed that will help the country, and then what you get is you know, fights, conflicts, you know, throwing tantrums. Yes. I don't think that's what...
Gentlemen, unfortunately our time is up. We would have really loved, yes, I want to give you a final chance to give your final comments. I would have really loved for us to discuss a hot potato, that's Mao evictions. The Rift Valley MPs appear to have changed tack, and that's highlighted on the dailies. During Tuesday night meeting, leaders resolved to let the government handle the eviction without interference. As you make your final comments, let's start with you, Senator.
Final comments is to you, Fred, and the rest of the viewers, those who share your sentiments and the cynicism that we are not making progress, we are not going anywhere. I think a new day has come in the country. The complaints is not that we are spending too much time doing nothing. The complaints are that the Senate is working. So it's actually a good thing that they are talking about us. And I don't think the newspapers should spend too much, or TVs, and these comments that other people are making. The fact is that by and large, we are going to deal with the evil called corruption. By and large, we're going to make sure that government is accountable, and in a bipartisan way, to the extent that you will not see a fissure of whether Jubilee or NASA in Parliament insofar as putting people to task. I am convinced today that the National Assembly refused to approve Chumo because Senate has been doing a good job. That's as my view. I'm entitled to that opinion.
Okay, Senator Kajwa.
President Uhuru Kenyatta has framed his legacy and called it the Big Four. But for me, the Big Four, or the Big Three that we must focus on, one is corruption. And we are making good steps. Two is environmental conservation. And the issue of Mao should not be politicized or ethnicized. It is not a local politics issue. Mao affects us who live around Lake Victoria. Mao even affects the people upstream in Egypt. So environmental conservation will be another. And the third one, which the president has to work on, is rebuilding a new sense of optimism in Kenyans. Kenyans have given up. Talk to the ordinary guy on the street. Talk to the young teenager or to the young adolescent. They just tell you that this is a messed up country. We need to inspire a new sense of optimism, and that optimism cannot come if Parliament is fighting, one arm is fighting the other. It cannot come if we have public officers like Swazuri who come and spit on us on TV saying that they're going nowhere when already we can see that there are issues surrounding them. So corruption, environment, and optimism. For me, those are the big three that we need to focus on.
Thank you. Finally, Senator Wamatangi.
Thank you, Fred. You know, my thoughts are that you know, we are enjoying a special time in this country right now, in terms of the mood and psyche that the country is in, on the single question that has driven us and taken us aback all this time, and that is corruption. You remember there was a time when the fight against corruption took a very you know, divisive and negative course about ethnicity. When you're trying to get somebody to answer to their deeds, you hear this is our man, you are trying to convict us as a community. Yes. But now if you listen to the whole country, everybody is unified in one cause, from across the political divide in the entire nation, that anybody now who is mentioned in corrupt deals, they are on their own. This is a good time to take advantage of that. I mean, listen to the country. When you talk about Ruaraka, when you talk about the other, nobody is speaking. When people are hauled to court to go and answer to what they did when they were given office, the country is expectant and waiting. And waiting because we have seen things now starting to happen since 2013 up to 2017. We are expecting as Kenyans to get more to happen. And so I would really want to say to anybody who wants to spoil the party, I mean, I will call it a party because it's a party for the country, that we are moving forward, that you're going to be isolated and victimized. And I would want to urge the president that that is the way to go.
together with the entire of government, Jubilee, the president, the deputy president, and all of us, we have to make sure that this is the mood that now goes on. We make sure that we get where we want to.
Thank you, Senators Mutula Kilonzo Jr., Moses Kajwang, and Kimani Wamatangi, helping us look at the issues behind the headlines this morning. Yes, you're still watching Daybreak right here on Citizen TV. We've just been looking at the issues behind the headlines. Willis Praburu is on standby with some news updates.